Welcome to Turn Down for What, your source for EV news and updates. Like and subscribe on YouTube for more content like this episode. Let's dive on in. So today we have the unique and wonderful privilege of having Branden with us. Thank you so much for being with us, Branden.
Glad to be here.
We have kind of chatted back and forth, and I know Chris reached out and we finally got you connected, but it's good to finally have you on. Kind of excited, especially with some recent news circulating the EV space that might be pertinent to you. It'd be great to kind of have some discussions over the next episode or two, depending on how the conversation goes, for some of the upcoming and exciting news that's happening. So we'll dive right in. Well, if you're good with it, I'll let you start by kind of introducing yourself and kind of how you're positioned, and we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, I'm Branden Flasch. I have a YouTube channel started during COVID times. I was bored. I had a Tesla Model S with free supercharging, traveled a ton, decided to start making some videos. They started getting some views, and kind of the rest is history. Do that as my part-time hobby, if you will, that gives me access and pays a few of the bills. And then I went to a large convenience store, gas station chain, led up all the technical efforts of their charger deployments there across North America, now with a charging hardware manufacturer, doing technical sales there, and keeps me quite busy, keeps me quite in the know in the industry, and it's also my passion. So even though it's my day job, I'm doing it basically 24/7.
That's awesome.
We share the same passion. all of us here have are I guess what we would label as nerds for the EV space, and something that I never, I would say confidently 5 years ago I would have never seen myself in this position, but the more I've evolved into the space, the more passionate I become, and it's now my career, both in podcasting and in charging. So that's
I knew I was going to be awesome, so I don't have to worry about it. I knew that easy.
Such a unique space, though. So much to talk about. That's why we started the podcast, was just the amount of exciting things happening in this space, talking about stuff that people may not know about, and obviously having a conversation that's not the sun, moon, and stars around EVs, but talking about the ups, downs, like we were talking about before we went online, the Cybertruck, the up, the down, the R2, the excitingness with that, and just discussing all of the variables that happen in this space, and from a realistic point of view, that way drivers and people considering the space actually have somewhere to get the realism of the charging network, the vehicles coming out, and kind of what the space is doing. So definitely excited to have you here, and honored to have your knowledge and experience shared on the podcast. So
yeah, glad to be here. This industry keeps us all on our toes and constantly learning. Right when you think you have it nailed down, then it changes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I will
one
say
of the big reasons. No, go ahead, Josh.
Oh, you got it, Chris. Go.
So one of the big reasons that I'd reached out to you is because what I found is that I know just enough to get myself dangerous, right? And I'm curious about it, and I dig deep in it, and I'm like, what can I learn? And I find myself in these conversations sometimes, and inevitably somebody ends up tagging, let's find what's Branden Flasch. He knows this stuff. Like, we're over here just spouting off about what we think and what we've heard and what we've read. And then we tag you in, and then here comes like the facts. And I'm like, man, like that's a whole big part of what we like to do on the podcast, is have real people that are out there living this stuff, share their times and their experiences and their knowledge, and make this stuff approachable. And I think your YouTube channel does that probably better than most when it comes to charging. You've really, I jokingly called you the key master, like just a Ghostbusters reference, right? To you find the key master. Where's Branden? Somebody tag Branden on this, because he's going to have the answer, and you inevitably do. And so I really appreciate you jumping on with us, because I think that you really are the key master to some of this complex stuff that is so nuanced, the differences in these things. And I love that you jumped on.
And for our listeners,
people that know more than me, but I like to think I know a thing or two.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, his YouTube channel is Branden Flasch. That is the title of it, but it's BRANDEN FLASCH. Just for the reference. So definitely go subscribe to him on YouTube. Some awesome content that comes out on this station. So anyways, kind of going into the first topic that we'll cover for today. Obviously, the news has dropped officially with the grand reveal of the R2, and I think we have several reservations amongst the group of us already, and figured we could have a conversation around the R2, what was announced about it, what's exciting, what's not exciting, if there's anything, about what the reveal was and kind of what you guys' thoughts are. So, Branden, tee us off. What did you find out about the R2, and what have you done about that reservation and announcement, or that announcement?
Well, I'll start off. I reserved 2 of them because I made the mistake with the R1T that I had of only reserving 1. And then I kept it because I liked it, but I should have flipped it and made a profit to partially pay for another one. So whether I can do that or not, it's $100 refundable deposit, but I figure I'd rather get 2 reservations in, have the option, and then decide later on when it comes out and see what the market's like. And if there is an opportunity to flip it or whatever the case may be, it's $100. It's refundable. Who really cares? It's basically a free call option. I mean, sure, you get a little inflation on that $100, but that's not the make or break here. I was really impressed with the overall event. RJ ran it super well. It started on time. They gave kind of a little bit of background and update on the company overall.
Unlike Cybertruck, which was what, like 30 minutes late?
I don't think he was naming names. I think he was just
I'm just calling it
the...
out on the spot. Elon, you were 30 minutes late. We were all waiting in your waiting room for a long time. So thank you, Rivian. Keep going. Sorry.
I was just giving the subtle jab. You can give the hard jab.
Right, right.
But yeah, RJ started on time. Great kind of intro, background, update on the company overall, some of the efforts that they've been doing, the accolades of the R1, the R1S, the R1T. And then they dove right into the R2 announcement, drove it on stage. It looks like a mini R1S, basically, I think is the best way to describe it.
It does.
I actually just watched MKBHD's kind of tour with RJ, and apparently it's actually very slightly shorter than a Model Y, which I learned, which is actually pretty surprising. So just to give some context for size of the R2. Also interesting, it's not the R2S, it is just the R2, which to me indicates that there may not be an R2T at any point. It may just be the R2. Whatever, probably for the best. The truck is probably not the most profitable path for them, or at least on the smaller chassis, probably not, even though I personally would love like a Ford Maverick sized EV truck.
Yes.
Super cool. Anyway, they announced the R2, super nice. Again, basically a mini R1S. Rear windows pop out, has NAC support in the wrong location, passenger rear. Has a sliding rear glass, open hatch that you can set, all the little things, flashlight, 2 glove boxes. They're overcompensating for the lack of one on the R1S and R1T. One in the center and then one off to the passenger side. All the seats fold flat, which is super cool. And apparently there's going to be an accessory for a bed that you can just put in and fill the entire cabin, basically, which is going to be super cool. And it starts at $45,000. So there's not a whole lot to not like there.
Yep.
And then when RJ wrapped up the announcement of the R2, there was one more thing, and that was the R3, which no one expected. Basically just a smaller little hatchback based on the same platform as the R2, but apparently going to be even less expensive. And then there was one more thing, the R3X, and that is what I am very excited for. It's basically a hot hatch of the R3 for off-road. If you look at
that look, yeah, that looks great.
Yeah, like a old school Volkswagen Golf side profile, kind of a aggressive but curved hatch design, kind of beefy tires, same hatchback. I'm really curious to see what that's priced at, but I'm thinking probably somewhere in the 60, 70 range would be kind of my rough guess if it's a
wow.
And like pretty spicy. And it will probably sell every single one they can make.
I read an article. I read an article that was suggesting that the base model of the R3 could be potentially cheaper than 45,000, but I guess it depends.
Yeah, that's what Rivian actually said officially, because I got an email as a former R1T owner that I get priority access to getting an R2. And then at the bottom of the email, they were saying that the R3 will start even less. But I think the R3X, the performance kind of
gotcha.
I think that might be in the like 60, 70 range, just as a pretty sporty, but maybe I'll be surprised and it'll start in the 50s. Who knows? But I think some of the really interesting bits from this whole announcement is that they're going to be using a 4695 cell format with the structural battery pack as part of this platform.
So that's
And
bigger. That's
keep
bigger than
track.
what's in your. That's bigger than what's in
Yeah.
your Y, right?
Yeah, so it's actually wider, or taller, sorry, than the cells in my Model Y, which are 4680. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Rivian manages the thermals on that, because that's been a challenge for Tesla and making it charge well. Hopefully they do a little bit more cobalt or something, or cool it from the top and bottom rather than kind of a spaghetti cooling down the sides. We'll see. But I really hope that Rivian shows Tesla how it's done with these larger format cells, because the 4680 has just been a total flop for Tesla. It's terrible in my Model Y. It's pretty terrible in the Cybertruck still. And there's really no benefit to that for any consumers. So I really hope Rivian just absolutely mops the floor with Tesla's failure there and wins.
Do you get the
Seems
sense
that
that when you're talking about the battery tech, I didn't see any note. Is it going to be an 800 volt? Is it still the 400 volt? Do you have any sense for that and what Rivian typically does there?
I suspect they're going to stick with 400 volt based on what I'm hearing.
Okay.
But again, the pack voltage doesn't change anything at the cell level. So if you look at the charge curve of my Model Y versus the Cybertruck, it's the exact same charge curve, basically, just multiplied basically for the increased pack capacity. So it's the same C rate, same curve, basically, because nothing changes at the cell level, no matter the pack voltage.
Yeah, I think when it gets into the charging speeds, is that the biggest difference you noticed going from your Rivian? You mentioned you were at an S, and then you went to Rivian R1T, and then to the Y. And the S has a pretty decent charging curve, and right. So is it?
Mine didn't.
Oh, yours didn't. Okay. And so
I
when
had
you
a Model X70D. It was like the worst charging curve you could possibly have.
oh, got it. Okay, so was the Rivian your best so far then?
Yeah, I mean, I had a few between the Model S and the Rivian. I had a ID4, I had a Polestar 2, I had a Mini Cooper SE. There were a few others.
There we go.
But yeah, the Rivian was by far the best charging EV I've had so far.
And with how much you travel, is that a big impact? Are you noticing? Because the Lightning doesn't have a very high charge number, but it holds a nice flat curve for a long time. And so at the end of the day,
Yeah.
I'm finding maybe it's an extra 5 or 7 minutes that I'm spending. But
Yeah.
when you're in the Y, how much longer are you spending compared to what you're used to on the road?
Oh, my charge stops are about 40 minutes. It's terrible.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I would put money on a Lightning being better at road tripping than a Cybertruck.
We'll have to
Yeah,
put
I
that
mean,
to the test.
we've been doing it quite frequently in the Lightning, and I mean, it's not terrible, but I'd say our average stop is still 30, 35 minutes at least, depending on the
Yeah.
state of charge at arrival. But I mean, we're peaking at 170 for most of the charging experience, but I think the other factors we're also limited by EA, a charging network, which is also
Yeah.
sometimes less than ideal, because yesterday I showed up with a nice warm battery and I was only getting like 130 out of the unit to a station. So I mean, it's a variable that I think is sometimes limited by the hour construct. So I guess that's something to be considered as well. But I mean, with the Tesla infrastructure, it seems like a lot of the other vehicles have done a lot better with the charging curve than what Tesla currently has going on with some of their models.
Yeah, Tesla hasn't been a leader in charge curves in many years.
Yeah, I'm curious. So you mentioned the idea of the not having an R2T potentially, because they're just calling it the R2 and not the R2S. And I'm curious, do you think any of that was, they've talked about the T3 and that's supposed to be coming in 25 or 26. And do you think they just kind of like looked at that and said, the Lightning's not jumping off the lots right now, and the R1S, I'm betting, sells more than the R1T at this point, and we love our SUVs. And do you think they just kind of said, we're gonna focus on the SUV aspect of it, or do you have any thoughts on why not? Because they started with the truck, right? And do you think they're just giving that to? Because man, we've talked about as a group a Maverick or a Ranger electric, please, like that would be amazing. It could sell
Honestly,
worldwide.
But if you put the Rivian R1T up next to the Lightning, the Rivian is closer to the size of a Ranger than it is the Lightning with its size comparison. So I mean,
I'm more talking
you
the
would
pricing,
get
though.
closer to a Maverick, I think, with an R2T.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Rivian already is small. Definitely comparative. I've sat in a few and driven in a couple, and it's definitely not the same thing as a Lightning.
Well, you're 6'4", so
Yeah, I'm 6'6", and I'm not
6'6". My bad.
I'm 6'6" and not a small boy. So
Yeah.
the difference between the R1T and the Lightning's a huge thing.
There's
for
a
me.
huge difference. Even I'm 5'10", and I got to ride in the same one that is a friend of ours. And and I get to drive the F-150 every day. We both have a Lightning, and you can even tell the difference when I got into the Cybertruck for the first time a couple of days ago. It felt more like a Jeep area that I was in, even though there's a lot more room than I thought. Just it felt a lot more claustrophobic in comparison to what I'm used to on a daily basis, which is the Lightning.
And another brief shout out to Elon, since we're on an Elon pair today. Thanks for the headroom in the second row of the Cybertruck. I appreciate it, bro. Thank you.
6'6", you are not sitting in the back seat of a Cybertruck. That is
I sat back there just to experience it because I'd heard the feedback, and my head was touching the glass in the second row. I mean, I could sit like this kind of, but my head was on the glass. Anyways, continue on.
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks,
back to
Elon.
yeah,
Good job,
yeah,
buddy.
got distracted. But yeah. Your thoughts on that? You're just kind of giving away the truck,
Yeah.
man. I'm surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think a truck is that practical for most people, realistically. I think SUVs are just far more practical. I think most people would rather have climate controlled, temperature or weather isolated storage than a truck.
Yeah.
Like a truck is cool, but it's really not that practical. Nowhere else in the world do you use trucks for anything utilitarian. You use vans.
Yeah.
What I
mean,
really
that's-
want to see, though, is Rivian, I don't know, R4 or whatever you'd call it. I want them to drop a full-size SUV, because the only current model that's going to be out there that's a full-size SUV is the Cadillac IQ, and that's $135,000. And obviously, there's a price tag associated with full-size, but, the R1S is similar to like a Telluride as far as the size comparison, maybe a little larger. But
Yeah.
relatively, I think there's a huge demand for full size. If somebody can get a under 100,000 full size SUV, I mean, that's the mom car. So I think you'd see some success in the sale of those. And as of right now, the IQ is upcoming to be, as far as I'm aware, the only full size SUV offering.
Yeah, I mean, it's a missed opportunity by Ford just making Expedition Lightning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've said Expedition or Navigator could do it too. Should Lincoln want to? But the Tahoe could go electric. You could do the Suburban. You could do the GMC. They've done the Denali truck. Just make it I mean, they haven't done it yet, but they're saying they're going to do it. But nobody's caring about the full size SUV space. And obviously, the F-150 is the best selling Ford in the gas powered realm. But there's a huge demand for the mom car. And, I love the Escalade IQ, but $150,000 price tag is still a lot of money. And having an under $100,000 full size SUV offering, you see a lot of moms driving the upper 80s, full loaded Expedition or a base Cadillac or a GMC Tahoe. All of those are featured in the $80,000 to $90,000 range. And I think those would sell like hotcakes. Should any of these dealers like Rivian, Ford, Chevy, or any of those decide to actually make something that's a full-size SUV? But
it's a missed opportunity when they have these electrified trucks. Just take the same platform and take the SUVs that are already on those platforms and also make it an SUV or make it an electric SUV. I mean, it seems pretty obvious to me, but I'm not in an OEM product.
Yeah,
I feel like they would
have
sell more. I feel like
Yeah.
the Expedition Electrify would probably end up selling more than the Lightning just based on demand, because the truck driver is thinking work uses and towing uses and stuff like that, which is not practical for. But for the mom car to haul the kids to school and back, an EV is a great use case. But what do I know? I'm just me.
Well, Ford has
Exactly.
Ford has the Explorer in Europe they're going to be doing, but that's based on a Volkswagen platform. It's not even
it's
based
tiny.
on. Yeah, it's very Europeanized for, it's not the way we think of the Explorer. So it's really I think the EV9 and the R1S. I think those are the two right now that are the 3-row kind of in that. It's still not an Expedition, but it's more in that, I think, Explorer. Wouldn't you say, Brandon? Those two?
It's
Yeah, somewhere
Explorer
around
range. Yeah. So
And
Explorer,
then this-
Telluride, Palisade. It's that 3-row, but no elbow room type vehicle.
And no real cargo space when you have that 3-row in use.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is, man. It's got to be a mental block, because I've seen a bunch of different posts about how the Model Y and then this R2 are kind of similarly sized. And
Mhm.
Like you said earlier, the R2 is a little bit shorter actually, but for whatever reason, that form factor of having it look like an SUV in my head looks and feels better than getting into a Y. A Y still doesn't feel like an SUV, or the Mach-E still doesn't feel like an SUV. They call it that. And I guess technically the room seems to be there, but for some
Mhm.
reason that R2 seems much more like an SUV than the other ones. I don't,
Yeah.
is that
It's
just an
the
optical
shape.
illusion? Is it
The
shape? Yeah.
Tesla being rounded off makes it look like a sedan, even though it's labeled a SUV. This is
It's
so
SUV.
crossover.
boxy. It's very Range Rovery.
Yeah.
Like it gives you that boxiness that makes you feel, I think, like more like an SUV compared to the Tesla. But I mean, yeah.
And I wonder
Yeah.
if that gives you more space in the back, that square shape. Are you gonna have more cargo, more room?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I know I was excited to see it. It rolled out and I was like, oh man, I gotta reserve this thing. Once they said the price, that was what I was waiting for. The price. Is this, can I, and they said 45, and 45, especially then the next key question is, can they get the battery chemistry and everything to where it can qualify for the 7,500? Because if you can have it at 45 and somehow get the 7,500, you're really into a territory, the average blue collar family. I mean, my wife's a teacher. I work for FedEx. We're not $100,000 Escalade buying families over here. But if I can get a 45K and then drop 75 from that, now we're talking.
What's the
I don't
largest thing we've talked about on this podcast was charging infrastructure and affordability of
affordable.
EVs, and having sub $50,000 vehicles is the
Yep.
largest demand. We have to get OEMs figuring out the models to make profit on that, whether that's quantity of battery, economy of scale, and getting those costs down. But the more vehicles we have under 50K, the more EV adoption will explode, because we're facing a crisis, not a crisis, but we're facing an issue where all the OEMs are having all these $100,000 models, which is cool, great, but the best selling Lightning is the Pro. The best selling Tesla is the cheapest model. If you look at that, I mean, and that's the case it is with gas powered too. But this solution for a R2 that's 45,000, if you can get a $7,500 tax rate and have a brand new vehicle in the 30s, that's a
Wow.
huge, huge, huge value add to get quantity of vehicles sold. And Ford's cheapest EV is $50,000. Well, I guess the Mach-E is a little bit cheaper, but I mean, you're seeing all these dealerships. The Hummer EV started at 100 grand. It's like you have to have affordable solutions to encourage adoption and quantity of sales. If Ford produced 100,000 Pros, I think that you'd sell 100,000 Pros. It's just you can't do a bunch of Lariats and Platinums and expect to sell.
Well, they're and
100,000 of them.
they're not making any money is the problem, right? Like
Yeah.
they said in their earnings this last quarter that not only are they not making money now, but they don't have any path currently that shows that it will become a profitable venture in the current way that it's constructed. That's why they're trying to kind of change variability. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but I think that's a big part of what they're trying to do to simplify their lineup. And Rivian says that by the end of this calendar year, they think they're going to hit positive gross margins. If they can actually achieve that and then start to roll out these lower cost vehicles at scale, and they said they're going to do it in the normal plant, didn't they, Brandon? Is that where they're going to do these?
Yeah, correct.
And
Only they're going to scale to Georgia.
okay.
And
And
then
then
to take their model to make a model for Amazon delivery, like they're doing smart things that can get them quantity of sales to make these investments worth it. But the EV industry is something that will take a gamble on, but as you scale and simplify manufacturing and do some of those additional variables, I think it helps the affordability model. But we just, obviously they're going to make the money on the $80,000 vehicle, but we have to find a way with these OEMs through whatever means possible to get the $45,000 vehicle that helps the OEM and the consumer, because that's what's going to end up selling to whoever figures that out first.
And it's Tesla. They're only one right now that makes money on their vehicles. And, I've heard that BYE does as well, or BYD does as well. But I know that they're also heavily subsidized through their government. So, where's the line there when it comes to it? Of course, we're doing the same thing. We're dumping, Ford is losing 30-some thousand dollars per vehicle, from what I remember. But I don't know how much of an incentives they're getting to build that truck either. So they might be making a bigger profit, but it doesn't show that way.
You know who's making money that shocked me? Just came out recently. Stellantis. Stellantis makes money. Did you guys see this on their EVs? It's all European, right? But Stellantis sneakily under the radar says that they are now net positive when it comes to their EVs. Did you guys see that? Anybody else see that out there?
I saw the article. I didn't read it, but I did see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because all the
They're in the
quality they
Renault.
have for their Jeeps.
The Jeep and the Renaults.
Yeah, it's that was shocking to me. And then I don't know if you're gonna know this, Brandon, but the R1T and R1S, I think for a minute, and I don't know if this has changed, it didn't qualify for the 7,500, right? And then has that changed recently?
I believe it still only qualifies for half, and I
Half.
think it's still only the ones under $80,000, which is not
Right.
many of them at this point.
Yeah, and I mean they're all manufactured in America, so it's got to be the battery chemistry, right? That's got to be where they're sourcing their minerals is.
Yeah, it must be.
And then this R2, this is a net new battery pack for them, is that right? This is the
Completely new.
yeah. So I think, did you see any details on that, where that was coming from and where it was going to be manufactured? Did they talk about all that at all?
Not at all.
Yeah,
I think
so
that's still to be determined. It's still a year and a half, 2 years out. So I'm not holding my breath on details on that quite yet.
yeah.
It'll be a year and a half, or at least a year before you get a build-in price and some of the variables with the exact details. Because I mean, I'm sure they'll have extended battery pack, maybe that's more expensive, like they did with the R1S and R1T.
Real quick,
Yeah.
too, on the Stellantis part of this, I will say that the new vehicle the Dodge released for the Charger looked extremely good for what they have. So I'm kind of happy with the way at least that's looking like they're going to produce.
Are you talking about the Ram Charger?
No, the car.
The car.
yeah.
Got you. Yeah, the tiny frunk though. I can't deal with the tiny frunk. The Brandon, what do you think about the R2 frunk is not powered? That was the first thing I noticed, was that he manually shut that frunk. Do you think that, and you didn't mention, so I'm assuming there's no 110 AC up there, and it is a lower price, so I suppose that makes some sense. But I know those are two things for me that I'm like, power frunk and a little bit of AC. Give me a 110. Like, what'd you think of that?
Well, it's power open, just not power closed.
Okay.
And Rivians don't have outlets in the front anyway, so that's no different.
Yeah, and I know Tesla's made aftermarket has made it where you can power open and close the Tesla ones, so maybe there'll be an aftermarket. I'm hung up on that. Maybe I'm so spoiled by the Lightning having that power, and I feel like it's a
It
great
was very
benefit.
nice on my R1T.
Yeah.
My one beef though is everybody with my Lightning, like if I go pick up a grocery order, everybody's trying to like manually shut it, and I'm like, just hit the button and walk away.
Yeah,
hit the button
you
and
have
walk away.
I have to don't try to shut it, because it will mess it up if you do it the wrong way. You'll have to reset it and tell it.
That's why you get out and help them put the groceries in there, Josh.
Come on, man, help somebody out.
They don't like that. They don't like that.
You briefly mentioned that charge port door. That really stood out to me right away. I was like, why would you put it there? Any chance you think they'll second guess that and flip it to the other side, or you think that's locked in? Because what would you're a CPO guy. Like, why would you ever put it there? That can't be. That's got to be even worse than the front, right? Is there any reason? Kia does that though. Kia has it back there, so Kia's doing that.
It matches the Rivian charge port location on the R1s. I mean, it's doing the opposite corner is effectively the same. You're just backing in instead of forwarding in. So I guess they're still banking on the Adventure network, but I think that's a miss if they want people to use a supercharger network, which is the most built out network currently.
Right. Yeah, that stood out to me definitely, and I think it's I hope they reconsider that, because it's definitely not helpful to have it back. And how hard would it be?
For Rivian. I mean, the originally announced R1 series back in, I think, in 2018 at the LA Auto Show actually had a passenger front charge port, and then they flipped it to the driver's side.
And passenger front makes sense to me too. I mean, that's the Ford Lightning in Europe. In Norway has the passenger front. The Audi, right? Audi has it.
No.
What is it? What's the? I just saw one the other day that had that. Porsche Taycan. Yep. Yeah. And the e-tron doesn't have it in that front corner. I thought it did. Maybe
no,
not.
it has it on the driver front.
Okay. So yeah, interesting how these things are.
EVs. I love the EVs that you pop the frunk and there's nothing there. I'm like, what are you doing?
Oh, it's
part
just
of the
all
benefits of the EVs. I think the Cadillac Lyric was that way, You
Yeah,
pop
all
the
the are.
front and there's nothing. It's just a plastic piece. I'm like, why do you even have like it's just access for maintenance? But what a missed opportunity. Like make it work.
Fisker,
Like
you can't even open a Fisker. The Fisker doesn't even, you don't even get the womp womp of opening it and seeing all the gear in there. There's not even a button for it.
yeah,
Fisker just sits there.
They have a special little pivot piece that comes out to fill your washer fluid because you can't open the front.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a strange one. It is interesting
missed
to see these.
opportunity.
Of all the things we can't align it, can't we just align? I mean, I get it, cars aren't aligned, but those are pull-throughs in gas vehicles, so it doesn't matter. Maybe eventually we'll get to pull-throughs, between Branden and Josh and Jesse, you guys build some pull-throughs, but
all of our sites will be pull through, so don't worry about it.
Well, Brandon's not building them anymore. You're supplying them,
No.
so you gotta get that. Yeah. But yeah, these charge port doors, man, it just seems it'll be interesting to see what Ford does with T3. I mean, I feel like from what Jim Farley has said that he recognizes that partnership with Tesla, and I would be shocked if it's not in that back corner on T3 or whatever they come up with.
That's the biggest reason that we've made a push against the gas station model. Obviously, the gas station model works for practicality for the EV driver, but having freestanding solutions gives you the opportunity to create a gas station type experience for the EV driver with pull through, because charging ports are all over the place. But with the announcement of the Tesla adapter that we just talked about, the F-150 struggles at some Tesla ports to try to get access to the port with the length of the cables. But the solution that is pulled through. I've seen some very creative images online of F-150s pulling up to these Tesla stations trying to get access to the port, because those cables are just so dang small. And so having a solution that allows you to pull up, and if it's on the back right, back left, just like no matter where it's at, you can pull up to match your vehicle and plug in whatever cord you want. But that's just a solution that that's one of my beefs is you want to make an EV catered experience. And if you have a truck with a trailer, you're seeing trucks drop their trailer in a parking spot and they go get charged up and they get back out. And it's just, there needs to be consideration for the future of the EV industry outside of just the corner of a gas station parking lot. But
now, one other thing too that has happened since we were talking about the Rivian when they made their announcement is that they also paused the construction of the big $5 billion plant down in Georgia as a result of bringing the new model to the market quickly. So I think they're utilizing some of the cash reserves they have to bring the R2 to market quicker, and they're going to pause that $5 billion plant for now. I don't think they announced when they will be firing it back up, but I know that was the biggest incentive ever offered in a car dealership was when Georgia offered $1.5 billion for that plant to be located there. So I'm sure that's going to ruffle a few feathers.
Well, hopefully it doesn't delay too long. And that seems to be the trend, is people delaying and rethinking and, getting into hybrid and all these other kind of pivots that they're doing. And I really hate to see the momentum going that way. So hopefully I really want this to be successful. I want Rivian to get positive cash at the end of the year. I'm really rooting for these guys. I just think they have such a great car and truck, SUV, whatever you want to call it. I even like R3. I'm wondering, it's that hot hatch look. Do you guys think that's going to appeal more to women? Because 75% of EV owners right now are men, and I looked at that and I thought, man, I really do think this will appeal to my wife. I think women will dig that smaller form factor. I think it will be a great mom car, the R2 and the R3. Like, what do you guys think about that? Does it open the market for the women more? Like, do you think this will appeal to them? I mean, we're asking the wrong people. We're all men. We really need to get a woman on here. Somebody go get the wives, but. Brandon, go get your fiance. Let's get him on here. Let's figure out what she thinks about those. But what do you think about that? Do you have any thoughts on if that's going to help with that? Because it does seem male centric when it comes to a lot of these EVs.
I mean, I think a lot of that comes down to charging, because I see plenty of women that drive Teslas. It just has to be easy.
Yeah.
And the safety factor and the charging availability. I mean, I think we had a conversation with Franny a couple weeks ago, but I mean, there's a safety consideration between charging networks and at nighttime and the dark, and the lack of infrastructure kind of provides limited opportunities, and there's an extra consideration piece. But I think as charging network becomes more widely available, reliable, consistent, and you're seeing more variety in the vehicle market, I think that there will be an increase in women, ownership, but it's just something I think it's going to come with improved confidence in the vehicles, and having the reliability that people can expect, and providing vehicles that women might be more attracted to, which would be the SUVs and the things that like I said, the mom car. I mean, they don't have anything like that outside some Tesla use cases and stuff like that. So
I think as we wrap up this segment, the last thing is that I wanted to bring up, because we'd be remiss if we didn't. We talked about the simplification that Ford was doing, and one of the big things they're doing for 2024 is they are eliminating the XLT extended range, and they are eliminating the Lariat standard range, and coming out with the incorrectly named or incorrectly spelled Lightning Flash. And wanted to get your thoughts on that. My favorite
Branden was meeting with Jim Farley one day,
right,
and was like, we need to fix this solution. And that was the origination of it. Go ahead and tell that story, please, Branden.
Do you remember who somebody, I don't know if it was Emma Berg or Jim or somebody, you replied, it's spelled wrong. It was brilliant. Who was that? Do you remember?
I think it was to Emma.
Yeah. That was just, I mean, how cool would it have been if they'd have spelled it correctly? Would that have changed?
It would have been wrong for everyone else. So
it would have been an order of one, but yeah.
Like, what do you mean you're naming it after like a German bottle?
What they need to do is Ford needs to make you a truck. You need to order one. They need to make you a truck and change the badging for you specifically to spell it your way and send it to you as a little
special edition.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I got one, I would definitely remove the factory badge and then like 3D print or something, a custom badge that had it spelled correctly, because obviously.
Yes. Yeah. That would just be epic. Yeah, it's the truck that I think it has a lot of the bells and whistles that people are asking for. I think the only drawback that some folks have commented on is the cloth seats, but they had it out here in California at a dealer, so I went by and did a little video review on it. And there's some exciting stuff in there. I mean, it finally gives us the charging speed in the display, the driver display, so you can see how many volts it's pulling, how many kilowatts it's pulling, and you can finally see that. It's not an in-depth nerd data screen like I'd love to see. So I'd love to see, give me a charge curve. I would love to see, I don't think any car does that, but at least it gives us finally on the screen the kilowatts. And especially since if you're charging at a Tesla station, you don't see it. There's no screen there. At least at EA, you can see the misery of the derated charge. At other stations with Tesla, you're not going to see that. So you're stuck looking at your phone app, either the Tesla app or your Ford Pass app. But now it will be on the screen. That was cool. One of the changes they made to simplify it too, though, is that it is only getting 48 amp AC charging. So the previous versions of the extended ranges all had 80 amp capable onboard chargers. And just to make it clear, because this has come up, I'm not talking about the charger you have on the wall of your house. This is, the EVSE, as it should be, is technically named, but everybody just calls them chargers. I do mean the actual physical charger in the truck. The extended ranges used to have dual onboard chargers up to 80 amps. And I think only the Lucid and the Model S's, the old Model S's, I think, had those previously.
Large battery lithiums have it now too. The 2024 Hummers, I believe the Silverado and probably the Denali have it.
Does that shut down the opportunity for bi-directional as far as powering your house, or is that still the same?
You can still bi-directional if you've got that charger, and it will still do that, but you're limiting the way you can charge it the other way. You can still export 9.6 kilowatts back to the house.
Okay.
You still have to have that, Ford Charge Station Pro, but you don't get the Ford Charge Station Pro with the truck anymore. So that's that. If you have the extended range, you're not getting the Ford Charge Station Pro. You're not getting the 80 amp. Now there is for fleet customers an option. They can option and pay for that 80 amp onboard charging for AC.
It might be because I've had so many darn issues with their Charge Station Pro. I've had issues with mine still, but whatever.
I'm assuming they know.
Or is that just the Flash?
All of them, all the extended ranges. Yeah. So the Lariat.
I think that's the right move. Most people don't need 80 amp onboard charging, and most people have no use for the Ford Charge Station Pro.
Yeah, so a lot of people were selling them, and they're not doing the bi-directional charging. So yeah, you're right. I think it's just over-engineered and overpriced, and now there's just going to be the two extended range options. You've got the Flash and you've got the Lariat. That is it. There is no Well, pro for again for fleet. If you have if you're a
I'm
fleet
platinum,
customer,
right?
Platinum. Sorry, you're right. Platinum. Yep, you're right. You're right. You know what? I live out the platinum because I'm never going to buy a platinum, so I just chop that off, because that's not even an option in my mind.
Hey,
But
there's a platinum on my lot for at my local dealership that's 1,000 more than I paid for my truck, and I'm like, man, what a missed
Oh.
opportunity. It's a brand new, but it's just been sitting there, and they have it discounted so heavy, it's like 81,000 right now. I'm like, man,
yeah,
yeah.
all
Whatever.
of us are. I mean, so to that point, Josh, I paid 69,000 for my Lariat standard range, and for that same 69,996 or whatever the heck that 995, whatever the number is, I could have the Flash, and I would
Yeah.
100% take that. It's got
Yeah,
Blue
extended
Cruise,
range, and more bells and whistles. Yeah.
Yes, I don't have Blue Cruise. I don't have extended range. I would 100% take that if I could have done that differently, and it was available to me. And I think it's kind of a sweet spot. I do still think that when you start to option things, so for me, Pro Power on board was a big thing in California with power outages. I wanted the full 9.6, the 7.2 exportable at 240, right? I wanted that. That's an additional $1,100. And then, so, it does start to creep up. The one that I saw, the spec that I saw, was near $74,000. And then at that point, you're questioning, well, for a little bit more, do I just get the Lariat? Because then I'm getting the leather seats, then I'm getting the sunroof. Then it comes already with the already comes with the 9.6 on the Pro Power. And I think that's part of the equation too, right? I really do think they need to get that Flash below 70 with some more options. But as we've seen now with Ford, when they need to move them, they'll discount them. So I think it's a great spec to have, though. I think it's got
you can buy.
the
I mean, the
best.
truck. To compare it though, you can buy the Lightning Lariat extended range. I've seen those down for like 65.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah,
It was. So,
the 23s. Yep,
yeah,
they are
all the
very
discounts. Now, if
Yeah.
if those had a heat pump, I would actually be tempted to trade my truck in. But
Yes.
until they put the heat pump in the battery, I wouldn't trade for another Lightning. I mean, I don't have enough trade-in value for mine, but if it had the heat pump, it would definitely be a little bit more tempting.
Yeah, and the Flash and all the 24s are going to have heat pumps. Is a Rivian a heat pump, Brandon? Is that
No.
no?
Probably on
Interesting.
R2 and R3, I would imagine, but not on the R1.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
I don't
something I
think
think-
there's a huge need for a heat pump on a larger vehicle like that, because you'd have so much raw energy from the battery, it doesn't make as much of a difference. Heat pump actually makes a lot bigger difference on the smaller, more efficient vehicles than it does on the larger, huge battery vehicles.
See, now that's the exact kind of Brandon knowledge. I'm telling you. See, we sit here, we have these conversations. Here comes Brandon, taps the shoulder. It doesn't really matter, man. It's got big old battery, all this heat. That's what I love about getting you on these types of things.
What
Yeah, I
we'll do
think
is we'll start.
myths,
What we'll do is we'll start the next episode discussing this topic.
Yes.
And we'll end this segment right here, and we'll continue on next week's episode, finishing this thought.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning in to Turn Down for What. Tune in next week for the second part of our fascinating conversation with Branden Flasch, as we discuss more on battery technologies and charging infrastructure. See you then.